Michelle, and thank you to our band. And just in case you didn't notice, in the opening song, Blaine did his first lick with his guitar. Woohoo! That's exciting. That's a stepping out, and I love that so much. And I do want to acknowledge that how cool is it that we have our first online member? I mean, how cool is that? Yeah. That's awesome. It just happens to be my sister, so. But it made me a little verklempt when I found that out earlier. So, okay, so today we are finishing up our series on breaking the 10 Commandments by the great Reverend Eric Butterworth. And so we're just going to kind of get into things today because I have a lot to cover. Today we're going to talk about actually the 9th commandment, which is going to be our last commandment. And then I'm going to do an overview of what we've learned throughout this time. So the 9th commandment is thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Now obviously at its face value, this commandment is very important because it keeps us in integrity with each other, right? Yeah, absolutely. So things that are implied here are don't lie about people, don't exaggerate, don't demean people to make yourself look better, don't engage in excessive criticism, and don't exaggerate. And Eric Butterworth tells us that this commandment sets forth the sacredness of our entire judicial system. So getting underneath this commandment, let's look at its deeper meaning. As we know, the breaking down of the 10 Commandments is getting underneath them so that we can see the relevance of them in our life today. And he said, you know, these were written for a certain people at a certain time, and there are still religions that follow exactly those 10 commandments. But that it's really a broader thing for us. And just like with anything in the Bible, you know, it's so easy for us when we get into new thought to kind of throw the Bible out. But the Bible is filled with such many beautiful things and teaching things and allegories and parables and things to help us live a better life. So, when we look at this, first of all, the word witness, after you get all through its translations, means seeing and knowing. It's about consciousness. Now, I know that surprises you because we haven't talked about consciousness at all through this series. It's all about consciousness. When we know, really understand and know that life is consciousness, then we will be much more responsible with the things that we see and the things that we sense, the things that we feel, the things that we think, and the things that we express in our own lives. Correct? Yes. Yes. So Eric Butterworth says we're not responsible for what people say or do, but we are absolutely responsible for what we say or do or think about them. So Walt Whitman says, the good or bad you say of another, you actually say of yourself. This is like like we know it, but sometimes to have the word spoken out is like, oh, okay, I really need to look at that. And, you know, as you give, so shall you receive. So how our great master says this, he says, judge not, lest you be judged. For with the judgment that you pronounce, you will be judged, and the measure that you give will be the measure that you get. You know, it's just universal principle. You give and you receive what you give out. So be aware of, you know, what are we saying about the people around us, about the people in our lives, about the government, about leaders, about anything. Are we bearing false witness in that? Now, another aspect of this commandment that I think is so important is bearing witness to the truth of our own being. So every week we say together this mission statement. Our mission is to encourage and inspire spiritual and personal growth by empowering each other to be authentically all that we came here to be authentic. Now, the depth to me of this mission is that it's not just talking about our personality, how we're showing up in the world. It's talking about our individuality, are that we are individuated expressions of God. Every single one of us is an individuated expression of God. And in that individuality, which in unity we call the Christ, which is why we sang that song to our new members. We call it the Christ. In that individuality, our great teacher exemplified this with his life, but also with his teachings. So we bear witness to who we truly are. And I would say that I know in my own life I don't always show up as that Christed being, but I know that we are working on this. And I think the main thing is recognizing this is a lifelong journey, my friends. We're always going to be expanding and evolving and unfolding and learning. And a lot of the ways that we expand and unfold and evolve and learn is through the things that kind of take us off track, right? That's one of the ways that we learn, because we go, oh, that didn't work out so well for me. Oh, I got caught saying this about this person or whatever. So, we want to be aware of that. Then again, our master said, I missed this one, sorry. To bear witness means the knowledge of the Christ indwelling your very own divine potential, and seeing from that knowledge, feeling from that knowledge, and then projecting in the words you speak, the things you do, and the feelings that you engender. That's so important, isn't it? Because we want to bear witness to the Christ. And bearing witness to the truth is how we live our lives. It's not in the words we speak. It's in how we're showing up in our daily life, how we're expressing ourselves in our daily lives. And he says that when we are giving witness to this Christ pattern within us, we're too expanded, we're too evolved then to belittle, to unrighteously criticize, and we're too humble to be boastful. So remember that's what part of what this commandment is about. We want to bear witness to the truth of our being by the life that we are expressing, the life that we are living. The world today desperately needs people who will make the commitment to bear witness to the truth, people who will make a special effort to be true to their God self within, to be morally straight and metamorally disciplined. Can I get an amen on that? Amen. Yes, because everything would be different if all of us really were striving to live from this. You shall know the truth, and it's the truth that will set you free. It's the truth that will give you the freedom that you desire in your life. Okay, so that's about that commandment. So now we're going to go through the commandments, and at the end of each commandment, I have an affirmation for us to say together. So the very first thing that Eric says is all 10 commandments are solidly built about one commandment, one idea, one process, and one truth. And all the rest deal with applications of this first commandment in our life today. So the first commandment is, I am the Lord your God, you shall have no other gods before me. One presence, one power. Gee, we say that every week, don't we? And we can so intellectualize things. We can so get them in our head. But the question is, are we living from that awareness? And I love that, Mitch referenced that in his interview this morning. There's only one presence and one power in the universe and in my life, and it is God, the good, omnipotent. Now, this commandment clarifies the allness of God as the only true power. Right? Yes, okay. I've always said that our life experience is in direct relation to our understanding of God. And so in my previous experience, which is what I like to call my PU experience, pre-unity experience. I know you're getting it now, yeah. Okay, yeah. Michelle's over here going, I relate. Okay, there was zero understanding of a God that didn't judge me or withhold love, and of a God that wasn't ever going to punish me. Wow. I didn't have that concept from my previous experience. There was no concept of a God that I didn't have to fear, and in which, instead of being a lonely sinner, I was born into original blessing. I'm not a sinner, I'm a winner, right? Yes. There was no concept of God as the allness because there was a belief in the other, the devil. I had this little kid come in one day. This is when I was the administrator here, and he was sitting across from my desk, and I don't even know why it came up, but he just said, "You have to believe in the devil." I was like, well, you don't have to. I didn't say that, though. In Ephesians, it tells us that there is one body and one Spirit who is above all and through all and in all. One. That's the allness of God. And this brings us to the reality that no one and nothing is against us ever. It may seem like it, but God is always for us. So the first commandment, I invite you to share this affirmation with me. The universe supports me. I accept God as the allness in which I am in eachness. God is for me. Okay, this takes us to thou shalt not make unto thee any graven images. So this commandment supports the previous commandment in recognizing that all things that God is, in all things that God is my source, period. Now, my graven images I may see my education or my job as my source. I may see other people or organizations as my source. I may see my bank account or my investments or my Social Security as my source. I may see medical professionals as my source. Now, of course, we have jobs for income. We use medical professionals. We're in relationship with people, absolutely. However, we want to get to the place where we recognize those are all outside of me. The only true source is that God is my source. So, how might this look? Although I use medical professionals and I take traditional medication every day, and I do this numerous times a day, I affirm my oneness with God. I affirm that I am the life of God. I am that. I go to that source within me because I know, just as with Myrtle Fillmore, our co-founder, that I have the ability to co-create with my body and with my higher self a body that is going to be healed and healthy and whole. And if I only count on what's outside of me, I'm probably going to stay where I'm at and probably get worse as my life goes on. So partner with this. God is my source. So let's say this together. God is my source of healing. God is my source of love. God is my source of abundance. God is my source of everything. Okay, thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. The word vain means to no avail or fruitlessly. And of course we know Moses came down, he tells everybody that the name of God is I am. Whatever we are saying after our I am, we are saying that God is. Would we ever say, God is broke, God is sick, God is a mess, God is hopeless? Would we ever say that? Absolutely not. We wouldn't say that. But we have to realize that every time that we say these things about ourselves, we take the name of God in vain because we are using words that are bringing about a fruitless result. If we're wanting to create more abundance, if we're wanting to have better relationships, whatever, then we don't want to say words in opposition to that because it's not moving us towards what we desire. So we want to be aware of that. I use my I am to call forth all that God has for me. So let's say this together. I use my I am to call forth the great good that God has for me. And share, repeating this too. I am unlimited possibilities and potentialities. I am unlimited possibilities and potentialities, and you are. The next one, remember the Sabbath to keep it holy. Now, the word Sabbath comes from the word Shabbat, which essentially means rest and communion. And, you know, we see the rhythm of the universe, the rising and the setting of the sun, the ebb and the flow of the tides. We see the seasons changing. We see that there's great rhythm to our bodies as well. And everything is in a constant process of movement. And in Genesis, it says, you shall work 6 days, which... What? But you shall rest on the seventh day, and this is the flow of life, and it's very important at its literal level. We have to take time to just chill out, to just be, to just breathe, to get off the hamster wheel of life, right? So from its literal perspective, it's very, very important. And from the spiritual perspective, my friends, it is having a time to commit ourselves to communion. Having that time to commit ourselves to communion. Now, hear me on this. It doesn't mean that we have to take 30 minutes or an hour. If you do, that's great. But it's taking time throughout the day, and especially when we find ourselves out of the rhythm of the flow of life. So this past week was hectic. And talking to other people, they kind of experienced the same thing. I don't know if there's just something going on, but there was so much going on. And yesterday, I always have my talk done by Saturday, but I didn't. And I had a wedding last night. So I'm working on my talk in the morning, and I can feel myself starting to get into this anxiety. And I went into the living room, and I looked at Paul, and I said, I am going to go use what I'm teaching tomorrow. I am going to go get in the flow of the rhythm of life. And I did just that. I went and I just took some time. And it can be 10 seconds. It can be a minute. But just to breathe and just to remember what's breathing you, to know that all of this is helping to manage you and helping to manage everything. And the rest of the day, you know, just went wonderfully. And clearly, I got my talk done. Okay. The Sabbath day is any time when you remember the allness of God that is present right where you are as the fullness of all that you are and all that you need done. This is what Eric Butterworth says. So take time to let Spirit breathe in. Did I miss it? Okay, well, here it is, because I was doing my slides this morning. Okay, so I'm going to have you repeat this after me. I take time to let Spirit breathe life into my whole being. To pause and become centered. Thank you. I'm like, how do you guys know? Like, oh, wow, man. We are one. We are one. Thank you, Gwenda. I thought that I put that in there this morning. Okay, honor your mother and your father. Now, this is really about honoring God, honoring the mother, father, God aspect of us, the male and the female. And this is really about honoring the creative process, that we have love and wisdom, that we have the head and the heart, that we have the thinking and the feeling. So we honor this entire creative process. And in so doing, this is what we're going to say. I give birth to the unborn possibilities of limitless life, love, joy, peace, and abundance, and it is my privilege to enjoy to give birth to that. Next one, thou shalt not kill. And really, Jesus said that, you shall not murder, but it's really, if you even think it in your mind, then you've already killed something in your consciousness. So this is really what this is about. When we are blaming or shaming or staying in resentment and unforgiveness, we are involved in the killing of consciousness, because in our minds we are no longer seeing the divineness that the person or the people involved that they are. We're caught up in the facade. And we're only seeing that. And so this commandment is really about forgiveness. And what does he say? Love your enemy, do good to them, pray for them, and bless them. And when we feel that somebody has wronged us, it is saying, turn the other cheek, is saying that I am willing to see this from a different perspective. I am willing to be open and to see a bigger picture of this. So, together, I choose to love those that I perceive as my enemies, to do good to them, to pray for them, and to bless them. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Now, obviously, in the literal realm, this is very important, but the word adulterate means to add something to or to dilute. So some of the things we adulterate ourselves when we don't own our own magnificence. Hello. Me? What? No, we own our magnificence. We adulterate others when we hold them in our consciousness as less than the magnificent beings that they are. And Eric tells us any idea that adulterates the oneness and the allness of God is committing adultery. So here's our affirmation. I commit to thinking and speaking words of truth. I will choose to see the divine in all beings as well as myself. I will not adulterate my consciousness. Thou shalt not steal. Again, all of these have to do with consciousness. It's a recognition I have my own inner contact with God. I don't need to take from somebody else. In fact, if I do steal something, the law of cause and effect is in play, the law of mind action, and the recognition that as soon as I even have that thought in my consciousness, or if I actually do take something that isn't mine, that I am the one that is stealing from myself, right? Yes. And I'm going to put this next one, thou shalt not covet, in with this, thou shalt not steal. And thou shalt not covet is you can want what somebody else has. And sometimes we do. We see something somebody else is doing or somebody has. But by coveting it, we are adulterating our consciousness because we are not in our belief that there is more than enough. We are not in our belief that I myself am in the free flow of God and the free flow of goodness. Because by coveting, we are saying, I don't have that. Maybe I'm not worthy of it. On the other hand, you cannot lose anything for which you have the consciousness. So again, it's all about consciousness. So for these two, I live and move and have my being in the allness of God. I am immersed in the realm of unlimited possibilities and potentiality. And our last affirmation is from bearing false witness. I bear witness to the truth of my indwelling Christ, my divine potential. I see from that knowledge and feel from that knowledge, and I project this in the words I speak, the things I do, and the feelings that I engender. So, in closing, I hope that I did make copies of these for anybody who may want them. But I hope that through this series that some things have kind of opened up in you. I know that has for me in many ways where I find myself in the midst of something and I'm like, oh, wait a second. And I start to shift my consciousness. This is all about our container of consciousness. And so whatever we can do to create the consciousness that there is only God, that God is for me, that I am an unlimited being, the more that we're going to experience that. And so I just want to say to each and every one of you, I behold the Christ in you. And so it is. Thank you.